got sick and I lost my voice, he was the first one at the hospital beside my kids. The cancer was worse than they thought. And I was so I said, I lost my voice. He said, let's face it, Jack, you never did sound like Richard Burton anyway.
Actor Jack Klugman, today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson. You know, show business is full of stories of co-stars who can't get along, who don't get along, who will never get along. So it's kind of refreshing to hear a story of co-stars who not only got along, but formed a long and lasting bond of friendship. Such is the case with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall, the co-stars of the hit 1970s TV series The Odd Couple. Now, you might ask, were Jack and Tony Oscar and Felix? Well, there was some evidence to suggest that was the case. But just like the characters they played on television, Jack Klugman and Tony Randall actually had a deep and mutual love and respect. Now, their bond was tested, sorely tested, when Jack Klugman was dealt a potentially career-ending, potentially life-ending throat cancer diagnosis. Well, Jack Klugman told the story of their friendship in his 2005 book called Tony and Me. And as you're about to hear, it was a book not only about this unique and strong friendship, but about years and years worth of anecdotes of Jack Klugman's long and illustrious and award-winning career. In just a moment, our conversation.
This is one of the more than 10,000 interviews that noted radio personality Bill Thompson did over a 30-year span. Sit back and relax, unless you're driving, in which case, keep your eyes on the road.
So here now, from 2005, Jack Klugman.
I have to tell you, I've read a lot of memoirs, a lot of autobiographies, Hollywood types. This is probably the best story that I've ever read. I mean, the warmth, the genuine friendship that comes through in this book.
Well, that is so funny because I just put down what happened. And the first 5 years when we did The Odd Couple, first I'd worked with them in 1954. We did a clinker called Appointment with Adventure. Well, in those days, Goodyear would sponsor 9 months of good shows and 3 months of clinkers because they were cheap. And we did the clinker of clinkers. And he played a professor that liked to cook. I played a gangster that liked to cook. We were The Odd Couple. But then I didn't see him until we did The Odd Couple. And we had a nice friendship. We respected each other. We loved the theater. We both studied acting under teachers that taught the same. But it's not until somebody becomes sick, is needy, is vulnerable, that the relationship either goes on to another notch or it dissolves. And when I got sick and I lost my voice, he was the first one at the hospital beside my kids. And I said, and the cancer was worse than they thought. So I had no sound at all. I could just whisper. And I said, I lost my voice. He said, let's face it, Jack, you never did sound like Richard Burton anyway. But then he said, if and when you're ready to come back, we'll find a venue for you. I said, yeah, you're going to find a venue for an actor without a voice. But he did. And he gave me back my life because acting was my best friend. It gave me an education. It got me to be wonderful people. It got me to travel. It gave me an identity. But above all, acting said, you learn that you could learn. And then the world opens up to you. I mean, you go into a library, or any library, all of them, they have all these books, 26 letters. I know the alphabet. Acting said, get a library card and you own the world. And I had only read Upton Sinclair to that point. And I became I devoured books. I read all of Faulkner. I'd go through them all, Huxley, and it was a wonderful time. I loved it. Even when I was starving in New York, I knew it was a better life than when I was a bookie. I was an odd numbers runner. I did a lot of things. Waiter, bartender, everything, until I was 23.
But that, I'm guessing, that kind of experience with people and working, in a real situation, it probably gave you that kind of background that an actor needs, didn't it?
Not really. I didn't know it. I got there. I left because I owed a loan shark some money, and there were two guys out to collect. They were going to break my knees, and I called this guy Uncle Tommy, but he said, Jake, I got $100,000 on the street. You don't pay me. I don't do anything to you. I could kiss that money goodbye. He was very friendly to me. So when I went to Pittsburgh, I went to Carnegie Mellon. It was Carnegie Tech then to study. Tuition was $225 a session, $450 for the year. Today it's like, I don't know, $12,000, $15,000 more. So I didn't know what an audition was. I'd never spoken before 3 people. And there were 27 girls, all in the book. 27 girls, I was the only guy. And which I liked those odds usually, but they were 17 years old. Proper. There was Nancy Marchand, who played the mother, and Seda Thompson, who was a brilliant actress. I did All My Sons with later. They were wonderful, and they were so accomplished. They got up and did scenes so smooth, and they spoke English the way it was supposed to be spoken. I spoke like the Sopranos. So I was intimidated, and I got up and I did, for the first time in front of these people, I did Our Town. I couldn't be more miscast than a stage manager. And I hyperventilated, and I said, I can't go on. Then I went around to be evaluated. And the editor department said, you are not suited to be an actor, Mr. Klugman. You are more suited to be a truck driver. But you see our problem, we have no men to do scenes with. She said, but I think I'll let you go if you come in under those conditions in January when the guys come back from the Army. It was 1945. I'd been in the Army. I had the GI Bill, so I said, hey, they'll give me that time. I can't go home because they're going to break my knees. So I figured I'd work. As I did, I sold a car for $85. And I got a job as a busboy, and I sent that home to Uncle Tommy. He saw that I was trying to pay him. And I paid him off, by that way. And the first scene I did was, I took 3 weeks to really... We rehearsed for 3 weeks, and now we're ready to go on. And there were 3 chairs, there were a park bench, and 3 flats that represented trees. And I loved this girl, and I had a rich uncle in Philly, and I went over there to eat, and he had chicken. I'd say I wasn't hungry because I didn't know how to eat it. I was so uncomfortable, and now I'm waiting to go on after 3 weeks rehearsal, and my heart is beating so hard. I'm sure it's going to come through my skin, and I go on stage. And a calm came over me that I had never experienced. And those 3 chairs became a park bench, and the flats became trees. I loved this girl, and I knew that I could eat chicken on that stage. And I knew I was more comfortable on that stage than I was in life. And I knew and when I finished, I didn't know where I was. Sometimes my concentration, I wish I had it today. And they were applauding, the kids were applauding. And she said to the kids, you see, I almost made a mistake. She said, I expected talent to come in a nice red box tied with a blue ribbon. She said, sometimes it comes with a lot of dirt on it. Just have to wipe away the dirt. And she said, Mr. Klugman, I was wrong. You belonged here. Well, I was 23 years old. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't belong anywhere. And when she said that, it was like everything fell into place. I just had a good cry. I went home. I said, I just cried. I went home and had the happiest cry I ever had. And that was it. And then acting, from that day on, I'm a coward in many ways. But in acting, you cannot monkey around with my acting. I mean, I quit lucrative jobs where the director said, no, say it this way. And I'd say, hey, tell me what you want, but don't you ever read a line for me. I told one guy, you couldn't get a job on Howdy Doody if you were an actor. So he never used me again, but it was worth it. I was very, very, I was going to be loyal to my best friend, which was acting, and I was. I really loved it.
As you talked about the very first day when you and Tony sat down for the first read-through, I guess, you yelled at him, and he said, you're not going to yell at me,
no,
are you?
I know. And he said, they all left. And Gary said, well, that went well. Tony said, yeah, except when Jack yelled at me. I said, well, that was part of the script. He said, well, you're not going to yell, are you? I said, I don't know. I said, that's why rehearsal. I may yell louder. I'm not sure. No, you mustn't yell, he said. I said, Gary, it hasn't cost anybody any money. I'll pay you back for the plane fare. I can't work with this guy. And Tony said, why not? I said, I wouldn't have the chutzpah to tell you how to act. Why are you telling me? He said, well, I'm just trying to help. I said, no. He said, fine. And I thought that was the end of it. But about 3 weeks later, we had 3 shows in the can. He said, why can't I tell you what to do if I think you're wrong? I said, now you can tell me anything you want, because now it's a suggestion, not an order. And we got along well, except that I was smoking, and that's why I sound like this. Terrible to smoke. And we were in the limo, and I was smoking. He said, "You can't smoke in here." I said, "I can't smoke in here. That's where I smoke." And we had a big fight, and he got up because I can't work with this guy. He said to Gary. And I came out and said, "I can't work with him either." He said, "It's very simple. We'll get 2 limos."
Sometimes that's the simplest solution is the one that works the best.
After this short break, Jack Klugman addresses the question, were he and Tony actually Oscar and Felix?
You know, AI is not just for 22-year-old coders. A lot of us older adults are drawing on our life experience to find unique and creative ways to use AI, at home or at work. Got an AI success story you'd like to share? Tap the link below to visit our YouTube channel, AI After 40, and let's keep learning together.
Now back to my 2005 conversation with Jack Klugman.
People assumed over the years that you guys were your characters.
Well, I know if you asked Tony that, he would have said, "Oh, what a great question." I am Oscar. I really am. I love to gamble. I love women. I'm messy. I'm not dirty. I bathe, but I'm sloppy. You look at my hotel room right now. But Tony, there are certain people, they're just neat. He sent away for a pair of pants that had Pepsi-Cola written all over them for $2. When he put them on, they looked like they came off the rack of Brooks Brothers. If I put on a pair of pants that just came off the rack of Brooks Brothers, they looked like Pepsi-Cola was written all over. Some guys just are neat. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember when I did Mr. Roberts, a guy had a Burberry coat. Paid $125. I'm talking about 1950. $125 was a week's salary. So I said, I'm going to buy one of those because he would throw it everywhere, but it always looked new. I bought it. I threw it one place on the train. It looked like a rag. I'm a slob. In fact, it's in the book. They couldn't find a wardrobe for Oscar. So they looked around and finally came to me and they said, "Listen, we'd like to buy your wardrobe. Whatever you've got." I said, "Well, I'd like to." They said, "Your jacket, your sports jackets, and 2 of them, and your pants and everything." I thought it was a compliment. I said, "Well, yeah." I charged them $360 and made a profit. That's how bad the clothes were. Then I realized it was an insult.
So what you're saying, the first season or two, the first couple of seasons, the clothes that Oscar Madison is wearing were your clothes?
Oh, my clothes. I wore them for 5 years. They were my clothes. Well, Tony had suits that were 35 years old. He'd say, if you don't have them clean, but they look great on him. I mean, they look like an old suit. You know?
You've got a great passage in the book where you're talking about how you watched Walter Matthau do the role.
Yeah.
And you realized that there was a line in there that helped you capture what you needed to do with the role, and that's when Oscar referred to Felix as his closest and dearest friend. That was the key, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's the key now. When Walter, I can't tell you how good he was. Not in the movie. Not that good in the movie because they got out. He was so funny, and they loved him so much. One matinee, I was about 2 weeks before I replaced him, so I watched him, unfortunately. He was so good, and his upper plate got loose. So he played the whole first act with a cigar clenched between his teeth. Got 1 million laughs. So I went out and bought him some Pollen at intermission and everything. He put it on. They came on loose again. He said to the audience, "My upper plate is loose." They applauded for 3 minutes. They just loved him. And I said, "It's got to be something." And then he said it really on stage. I heard him say, "And then you moved in, my closest and dearest friend." And I said, "That's the key to this play. They love each other. They just can't live together. Otherwise, why do they stay together?" And that's the important part. But people don't play that. When I did the television show, we had the best comedy writers in the business. We had Harvey Miller and Jerry Bussett, Gary Marshall was sensational. And I'd say, "Fellas, it's very funny." After 3 days, every show. Now, where's the love scene? Where's the scene where I say, "Felix, I love you, but I can't go that far"? Or he says, "Oscar, you've gone too far this time." And so when you have that love as a clothesline to hang the laughs on, then it became a show. And if I had to tell Nathan Lane, not that I have to, those Matthew Broderick, they are so good. But I would say, make sure that love scene is there. There's a moment, even Neil Simon didn't know it. He loved laughs. There was a moment where he's going to leave in the third act, in the play. And I'm standing in front of the door, and he said, I'd like to leave now. And I took about 6 seconds, just without any words. My eyes said, I love you, Felix. Let's not end this way. I just can't live with you. And then I stepped out of the way, but I never said those words. Well, the first time I did that, when I discovered it, Neil Simon came running back. What is this, death of a salesman? I said, you're getting all those laughs. I said, that's the moment. He said, no. He said, I want the laugh. I don't care what you want. I knew it was right. And it's the secret to that play. See, it's not about him. It's about his brother, Danny. Danny was Felix Unger. And Danny was my story editor. Danny's wife threw him out. He cried at the slightest provocation. And when he was alone, he lived in with a guy named Roy Gerber, who was Oscar Madison. So he started to write this. And Neil said, what are you doing? He said, I'm writing this play about me and Roy. He said, that's a great idea. Then they talked again. He said, how's the play coming? And Danny said, well, I can't get to it. So Neil said, let me write it. I'll give you 10%. That 10% has been worth $15 million. We just lost Danny last year. Oh, that's a shame.
Now, have you seen the Nathan Lane, Matthew Broderick?
No, I'm going to see it in January when I go there.
Wow, it's like sold out for months, isn't it?
They're scalping tickets for $1,000.
And you saw Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire for $1.80.
Okay, I saw Death of a Salesman with Lee Cobb. Better than that. For $1.80, I saw it 5 times. For $9, 5 times. You know, I'd walk down Broadway and I'd look between Broadway and 8th, and I'd see plays by Arthur Miller, by Tennessee Williams, Bill Lynch, O'Neill, Nick Kingsley, playwright after playwright, Maxwell Anderson. Just today, you pay $100, you walk down, you get one play if they got a play in them, and there aren't any plays now. They're musical revivals, and you pay $100. People were paying $400 to see the producers. Now they're paying $1,400. $400 is the going price for people out of town to go see Odd Couple. I wanted to do it with Tony for $25 because we never got people of color into the theater, and I wanted to bring them in. I said maybe it's too expensive because when I would see a play that starred black actors, it would be filled with people of color. So I said that's what we wanted. Get them into the theater. They said you can't do it. It just doesn't, you'll lose a lot of money. Tony put $8 million of his own money into that National Actors Theater, but he loved it. They treated him so badly. They called him the television entrepreneur trying to break into Broadway. He did such wonderful plays. He was not appreciated. He was a star, but nobody knew how good he really was. It was like when I worked with Ethel Merman. She would sing to me and I'd smile, And when we'd come home, she'd say, what are you smiling at? Did you pay to get in? I said, no, honey, but I got the best seat in the house.
It's stories like that. This book is probably one of the most fun books I've read in months.
Thank you. I didn't know. People tell me that, they were touched, they laughed, and they cried. I've selected, of course, the stories to tell. But it's just that happened. It all happened. And the funny thing, I did it when we did the Odd Couple. We of course wanted ratings, so we did. Though we never got them, but we did, and now I'm going out on the road. I thought, well, I'll be bored. People are coming up and they're saying, I grew up with you. I sat on the couch with you, with my mother or my father, and we laughed at you. And so I represent a very happy time in their lives. And I got goosebumps now. It's so wonderful because now they have an identity, they have a face and a name, and I'm having a great time. I thought I'd be bored. I'm having a great time going out.
Jack Klugman died on Christmas Eve 2012. He was 90. Now you can get your copy of Tony and Me by Jack Klugman by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking the link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you can also find my 1996 conversation with the man who created The Odd Couple, playwright Neil Simon.
And what I had Oscar say was, Felix, everything you do annoys me. I come home and I find little notes on the pillow. We are all out of cornflakes. Then I knew I had to sign it. Felix would sign it in an annoying way. So he'd say, Felix, Mr. Unger, something else. And I said, I'll put the initials down, FU. And I said, oh my God, that's gold. I just discovered gold.
And my 1995 conversation with the man who brought The Odd Couple to television, Gary Marshall.
We lived like everybody else. When my shows were 1, 2, and 3 in the ratings, I remember I told my wife, hey, why don't we? She says, I know, it's wonderful. Come help me take out the garbage.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, a well-known TV newsman and commentator has written a book, a novel, a mystery story, a thriller about murder among television news people and commentators. My 1998 conversation with Bill O'Reilly.
I've always been a maverick. Anybody who's watched me on television knows I speak my mind on the Fox News Channel, on Inside Edition. I just laid it out there for you. You make up your own mind. I'm a maverick. I've always been that.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.